you in this forum, which was also her brainchild, to speak to you of matters affecting Barbados in the first 3 months of the Democratic Labour Party regime. I introduce and I give to you a political leader and leader of the opposition, Mayor Mortley.
I can take this over. Thank you very much. It is a good thing to see the Barbados Labour Party family together at Foundation School this afternoon. And I want to thank all those who helped arrange this evening, because throughout the next few months, we will lead, but the voices of the people will be heard. And this evening was about giving people the opportunity to speak. Those who are visiting us, like Rodney and Prophet and Eddie, and those like you who must continue to have a voice at every meeting that the Barbados Labour Party holds, because it is your voice that guides us. And I say this because we have grown up in a Barbados. Pardon my manners. Let us welcome Timothy again. Timothy Harris is no stranger to the Labour Party. Some of you may recall a fiery greeting and speech that he gave at Harrison College about 10 years ago in our annual conference. And there were some who were begging him to put in his petition papers and become a Barbadian. Timmy, welcome. And believe you me when I say that without fear of favor or prejudice, we believe that any parliamentary system that does not allow the members of parliament to legitimately state their position in terms of who they want to be the majority person that has their support, that if you can delay parliament for 7 months, even though 6 of the 11 MPs have said they no longer support the Prime Minister, something is fundamentally wrong. And we will support good, righteous action regardless of who brings it. And if you are fighting for the cause to defend your constitution, then we say to you as a colleague in the Commonwealth parliamentary system, you have to fight for it. But the point that I'm making is that we, over the years, became accustomed to a country, even before I was born, of leaders who mixed. You know, when I went in the sugar fields a couple weeks ago, we went to Friendship, we went to Applewitz, we went to Andrews, by Andrews, Fisher Pond. And about 10 or 12 of you from the party called and said, the older ones, Lord, it reminded me of Grantley. I wasn't born. But what I do know was that there was always a sense from listening to members of the National Council that this was a leader who mixed with people, who listened to people, who felt people, and whose policies came from it. So that when the sugar workers told him that there were plantation owners who would want to deduct half the salary and tell them that, look, because I gave you something to drink last weekend, Grantley said no. And he passed the Protection of Wages Act to stop people from deducting from people's wages. He even said you can't pay them in a rum shop. When the lady said, look, we worked 365, we didn't get no break for 10 years. And Grantley said, no, there must be holidays with pay. And when you had Errol Barrow too, and he moved with the people and he listened to the people. And when he heard that you needed to protect workers who may have been hurt or workers who needed to have pensions protected. Bar formed the National Insurance Scheme. Bar heard the cries of people and completed the work of Grantley in education. And you had Tom, and the first act of Tom as he moved through among the people. When they took 14-year-olds out of school, Brady's here. Tom Adams said, not under my government, put them back in school. And when you had Tom moving through St. Thomas and the rest of the country and realizing that people wanted to do better, people wanted to make better for themselves. And he realized that these same people were living on land for centuries in some instances. And Tom went and got Sir Roy Marshall out in England at the time and tell him, help me pass and craft this legislation so I can start the biggest piece of land reformation in the entire hemisphere. And we got the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. And then you had Owen Arthur, who came through the hornpipe between 91 and 94 and saw some of you and some of your parents and your aunts and your uncles be among the 4,500 that were sent home, be among those who got the 8% pay cut. Owen was there with you. Owen was in the march. Owen led you. Owen said, I am going to give you back your money that was taken away. Owen heard the cries of the casual workers. Owen heard all, I won't call the names, but enough of you in here worked at MTW, worked all across the government service, but because you were a casual worker, you couldn't go to the bank and borrow a cent because you could be dismissed at 1 day's notice. And Owen said, not in my country, you must be able to earn and own. And even if we have problems with Thompson, Thompson tried to. Thompson at least used to mix in the karaoke. Thompson used to mix in the dab. Thompson even used to mix with the old brigand even if he fell down. Thompson even gets searched in the penthouse. But the point is, Kerry, he mixed. He may not have produced much, other than to send the Guyanese out, sorry Eddie, sorry Prophet. But he mixed. And what he would or would not have done, we will never know. But we have a man in Barbados now. And it is not by accident that we have come to foundation school, because foundation was supposed to have been his foundation. I have come here this evening, like you, when we leave this room, to go and look at every corner of this property and find out what it is that Frandel eat or ingest or do that can cause him to be so completely disconnected, uncaring, incommunicative, don't care-ish, insensitive, callous. What is there somewhere on this property? Because there are others who came to foundation, but they're not the same way. Now, a reverend has said, not me, that it is because he spent most of his time at the cemetery. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm serious though. You cannot run this country from a study. I have been told that nobody has seen the Prime Minister for the last 5 days. And in fact, there was even concern that they should call the police to see whether he's still living. No, I'm serious. Because they don't see him. And at least when Parliament is meeting every Tuesday, we know he's alive. Even if we don't hear him, we know that he is living. And we would not wish ill on him. But you cannot run this country from a study. You cannot tell us about the wonderful works of Didi Garner and T.T. Lewis and Winter Crawford and believe that men who passed into the next world in the 20th century can help you in the second decade of the 21st century. The young lady, 19 years old, is telling the rest of us that 94 can't help us, and Frondel wants 1950 to help us. And the disconnect, when he does engage, it is with office holders, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, the president of the Barbados Hotel Tourism Association, the president of this and the president of that, and even them don't see him very often, about twice a year or once. He's not coming to rub shoulders. He's not coming to hear the stories of you, prophet. Eddie, he's not coming in Oystins to sit down and listen to the men that talking to you, or the policeman last night who tell you that his pay is $1,500 short and he don't know how he can pay his mortgage this month. He's not coming into Pinelands to walk with you, Rodney, other than when he wanted to introduce Hannes, Canis, Tanis. What was his name? Rancid? I don't know. Other than when he came to introduce him, and then he was surrounded by a bunch of special branch and police, as if he felt that the people in the Pine had something in mind for him. He's not coming to mix with you. And worse still, he's not talking with you. He's not reflecting what you're feeling. David Brooks, he wouldn't know what you got here today and almost caused tears to come in this audience when you spoke. Or Eddie, I confess, I had to hold myself back when I heard you. And Jerome described you as speaking from the heart because you brought tears to my eyes when you spoke this evening, Eddie. I am saying to you, I want to share with you this evening. And I want to share with you because I am aware of the tremendous obligation that is imposed on me and my parliamentary colleagues. We may not have won 16 seats, but we have more than 60% support in Barbados today. And as we move week by week by week, people are crying out and asking us, when, Miss Motley? When, General? When, Boss Lady? What happening? I hear you. Believe you me, I've heard you. And believe you me, every single day, Pat will tell you that I'm in meetings from day to night, meeting with people all across this country, speaking to people all across this country. And I took a vow when I took up the leadership, two things. One, that I am erasing everything up here. You know how you erase a hard drive? Well, I'm erasing it. And while I know that I have 20 years experience in government and parliament, I want to hear from the people, and I'm going to travel every nook and cranny to hear the people of this country. I don't want to assume, Eddie, that I remember what the teachers told me when I met 4,000 of them in '94, over 3 months. I don't want to assume that I remember what the manufacturers told me 7 years ago. I don't want to assume that I remember what the gas station workers were telling me when I was Attorney General and had to meet with them. I don't want to assume any of those things, and I encourage my members of Parliament to do the same. Because when we listen and we ingest, just as those leaders who I started off by citing and quoting earlier, that sense of listening and that sense of caring and heart and the creativity of the brain and the experience that the Labour Party has given us in public policy will allow us to mount a rescue mission for this country, the likes of which have never been seen. And I also vowed that I am not naive. We've had problems in the past. But everybody in this party, like me, starts with a clean slate. And I am simply asking for us to do one thing. Put the people of Barbados first. And once we put the people of Barbados first as a party, and we act with that as our dominant interest all of the time, then I have every confidence that we will partner with groups and people across the country to be able to undertake that rescue mission. If you stay focused, and you listen to the people, and you keep the heart, you apply wisdom, we will get through. But what is the reality? As I move, people ask one question. I ask it in different ways. But what really the government doing, though? Mistress, what the government doing? Mistress, you can't hear you talking. What the government doing, though? All over, people are asking the same question in unison. And the answer is equally all the same. So that we have come here to start the process. Jerome told you that yes, we gave them 100 days. Because sometimes you have to respect the will of the people. And the people said, how much ever we may disagree, that they tip us at the line, because that's what they did. There were people who went to sleep the night of elections, assumed the Labour Party had won, got up, bathed, dressed, went out to the shop, coming back home, somebody showed them a paper. They said, wait, where you get that paper from? And the old woman said she almost had a heart attack because she was the most surprised person to see Frondell Stewart's picture on the front page of the paper as the winner. And that was how close it was. But we understand that we live in a democracy. And that is why we can say to Timmy, without fear or favor, you live by the rules. But we equally understand that history is replete with circumstances where people cannot take pressure anymore and decide and recognize that they have the power to do more. And they have the power to do better. And I spent all of last night, and I do it almost every few months, watching one of the most extraordinary Barbadians ever to have lived, a woman called Shirley Chisholm. A woman who took on 250 million people and stood up. She was not brown-skinned like Obama with a white mother. She was black. But she never asked to serve on the basis of being black or being a woman. She asked to serve the people. And she spoke to issues 42 years ago that people are now talking about in Congress and in the United States of America. And she said each time, the biggest difference in her life came from the years when she was raised in Barbados by her grandmother, who told her, stand up straight, girl. Don't let anybody intimidate you. And secondly, don't slur your words. How many of us have heard it from our grandparents? But what was important was that in reflecting on her and in reflecting on the civil rights movement, black people in the U.S. had to rise up to fight for rights where none existed. Black people in the United States of America had to fight for rights where none existed. And the great Martin Luther King, following the example of the great Mahatma Gandhi, to be followed by Nelson Mandela, all three men, they were all M's, by the way, believe that People are only powerless when they accept that they are powerless. That people have it within them even when the law is against them, to rise up and stand up and be counted. And I am here this evening with a very simple message, that we are going to continue the journeys, but we are gathering steam with them. We are prepared to stand in the breach for the people of this country, because we understand and hear the suffering that you yourself heard firsthand this evening. And it is not about political spectatorship. It is about you too recognizing the power. You are leaders in your community. You are leaders in your church groups. You are leaders in your sports groups. You are leaders in your family. And understand that what lies ahead of us, if we are to make it happen. What's your name there? Sorry? Arabelle. As Arabelle said earlier, if we are to make it happen, we can no longer wait and we can no longer talk. Frondel, we have had enough waiting and we have had enough talking. I say to you tonight, without fear of contradiction, that time can be no more healer. You have been given time. When David Thompson was ill and you acted for a year, the people gave you time. When David Thompson passed away and you became a new prime minister, the people gave you time. When we came and we were facing the need for an election, you went over the 5 years and the people gave you time. You have come back, and out of the decency that my parents have instilled in me, I have given you 100 days and I have given you. Well, we are here at Foundation this evening to say there is no more time. We will not lift arms, but we will continue, and if necessary, we will build a coalition of conscience and a coalition of action in this country, and I give you notice of that tonight. And I ask you, the members of the Labour Party, when you are home and you have children in the house depending on you, and you want to pay the rent or the mortgage and buy food, the children understand that you sometimes have to leave them at home and go out and work. I am telling you that I will be using my days, and some of your MPs will be using them not only to talk to the family of the Labour Party. We will come together periodically when necessary. But we must now go and win souls into this coalition of action that is necessary to save Barbados. Your child does not forget you because she didn't see you for a day. The love is still there. The commitment is still there. And if I am out mixing and converting and gathering people to participate in what must become the greatest rescue mission since independence, then come with me. Go out there. And I want to say to the public and to you, as we meet, because a wicket must be rolled before you start play. But I have served notice that we will be seeking to build a coalition of conscience and a coalition of action. Because if things do not change in this country, somebody must stand in the breach. And when the people ask, who will? The Barbados Labour Party will say, we will. And I say to you tonight that there will be multiple paths. Some of you watched on as the Public Accounts Committee met this week. I will not prejudice the hearing by talking about it tonight. But suffice it to say, stay tuned. And to the public servants of this country, I say to you, do your duty by your country. You are there to defend the public interest. And if anybody at all, and I'm not talking about this situation alone, or at all, if anybody at all asks you as a public servant to do anything that is wrong or to break the law, tell them no. Because as sweet as I am, I give you the assurance that if wrongdoing is found in this country, the people will be held accountable. I have already said about Clico that I cannot take it, that there are vendors, prophet, who get picked up in town and harassed in town for selling without a license. And a man can sell 2,000 insurance policies and still drive any one of 3 or 4 cars when the day comes. I don't dislike the man. And he will tell people that I shook his hand at the opening of Parliament. But Danny will tell you that I shake hands with people even if they go to prison in my constituency. Once they're my constituents. But wrong is wrong. You can't come after the people. A woman who is trying to make ends meet may not have a license, but taking a chance and you will harass her, and you got a man that could choose one of 3 or 4 cars when the day come to drive, sell 2,000 insurance policies, and not a whimper or anything? No, no, no. You have people. There must be one law in this country for everybody. I asked Kian to come. She came a little late. Stand up, Kian. You saw her in the paper. We met her on Thursday when we walked through Swan Street. You may know Kian. She can sing. I can't. Kian's store closed 3 weeks ago. Kian is now selling in the Swan Street Mall from the middle of the road. And if the rain falls tomorrow like it fell today, she got to beg somebody for lodging so that the clothes she has do not get wet. Kian, thank you. I want us to understand that what is at stake is too much. Too much. And we will continue to move around. And there's a role for each and every one of you in your community, in your church, in your sports groups, in your family, at your workplace. We can only allow the people of Barbados to rise up and say enough is enough if you help me and Kerry and Maria and Eddie and Santia and Dale and George and Dwight and Glenn and Trevor and Cynthia. Owen, all of us, if you help us in it. If I ask you to lift that speaker there, ma'am, you can look at me and say, wait, you're a mad woman or what? If I say to the 4 people here, come and help me move this speaker. When done, they're going to ask me, you want the next one moved too? You getting me? Many hands make light work. And each of you has to become one of the people leading the effort to help us rescue Barbados by getting your neighbors, your family, everyone sensitized. I'm not fomenting revolution. I'm trying to save a country where the government has gone missing in action. My name may be Mia, but they have gone missing in action. And that's what we're trying to do. And at some point, they have to listen to you. Because they can only govern because you consent to be governed. And you are now saying, stop kicking me in the back. Stop kicking me in the stomach. If American get here and kick Pat every 2 minutes, and Pat remains quiet, American going to continue to kick her. Those who get noticed are those who stand up and make noise. And I'm saying to this party that the time has come for us to reflect these experiences, not just our own, because it's not only about BLP members, it's about Barbadians. And that's why these people are here today. And we have a duty after 75 years to stop people from losing everything that they have. Every day people call and say, but are we going to sit back and let 16 men and women cause us to lose everything? Men like Brooks who are over 50 say, but you know I can't make back what I can lose. The time I have left to work, I can't make it back. And that is the fundamental point. Abigail, you might have a chance. You're 19. You might go through a few years of roughness, but you have a future ahead of you, so long as the government changes. But there are men and women in this room who will never be able to make back what they are at risk of losing or what they have already lost. And that is the tragedy. That is what they must stand accounted for. And this notion that it is the international economy, it is international worthlessness on the part of the local government, not economy. You have a government who on the eve of last election, while we were studying what are the good policies we can put to you, we make a lot of time, we spend a lot of time, Owen, Clive, myself, Jerome, all of us, writing policies, taking it seriously. Kerry would tell you he had to rewrite a section 2 times. And you know what they were doing? They were busy calculating pensions. I'm not joking, they were busy calculating pensions. Ask Kerry. Because some of them have already, and some of them ain't due for it yet. And that becomes their prime motivator, not your circumstances. You ask any clerical officer and any secretary who works in a ministry, what time the ministers come work, what time the ministers leave, and you begin to get the picture that they are not even spending 8 hours. Ay, foolish me. Foolish me. The others will tell you in education, Cynthia, you remember the night you had to cook food for us and bring down at 2 o'clock in the morning? Because we didn't eat for 3-4 days working to finish EduTech? You know, the food was good. 3 nights a week, we were in that ministry till 8, 9 o'clock, 9:30. The permanent secretary, the chief education officer. Miss Hinkson here, why don't you have to tell you, Miss Hinkson, is it true or not? Senior education officers as needed. Planning unit all the time, Mr. Kamabach and them. Are we working? We weren't in any crisis then. But you have ministers with the country facing the greatest crisis since independence. Why? Why is it greater than 91? Because in 91, while the government didn't have foreign reserves, and while the public sector had to lose people, businesses in 91 could still keep their head above water. Now you have businesses send home 16,000 people from the private sector up to January, and we know every week Mike and them reporting more gone home. And then there are the 2s and 3s that don't make it in the paper. But the government can pick up and hire people at will before an election, not to be long-term as we have learned, but to be short-term. Now, I ain't talking about NHC as I tell you, but you would have read that the value-added tax department says, look, we are owed $379 million. in revenue at a time when the government's revenue is lower than it ought to be. But we equally owe businesses $175 million. You know what $175 million paid to businesses in this country would do? Even the Minister of Finance admit that he ought to be doing it bold-faced in a political cotton candy speech that as fast as you eat it, your stomach empty again. And they can still wait, mind you. But the point is this. It was at this foundation school, Jerome, you recall, in 2009 that I brought to you a circular from the Ministry of Civil Service freezing the hiring of any temporary persons or substitutes in the public service. Do you recall? And that, mine in the circular, I ain't hiring nobody. But don't have anybody to process the refunds. $175 million to businesses and nobody to go and collect the $379 million that owed to it. But we hiring the bushes, pan the bushes, pan the bushes, pan the bushes. I never see a country that got more the bushes than we got in Barbados. And yet, if you drive in my constituency, between Warrens and Huddersfield Turning, the bush choking the little palm trees that are about 4 feet high, and the bush higher than the palm trees. You understand what I'm telling you? Now, I don't know if the only debushing in St. Philip North and Christchurch East. Wilfred, you had tell me. But I know they're not debushing down on the highway. I can tell you that. And the fundamental point must be that you cannot have a government that sits idly by while the center falls through. And every decision is made for political survival and political expediency. That is why we have now this evening agreed that this coalition must be necessary. A coalition of conscience, because you must ask people to think and tell you in the conscience whether this is fair. People can't pay the bills. People can't eat. People getting stressed and getting heart problems and getting all other kind of medical problems. People getting laid off. People running when they see the bank calling. And as Rodney said, mortgages, mortgages, mortgages. And with other people, is rent. The last call I took before coming in here was from one of my constituents who had to be evicted because he hadn't paid rent in a few months. And trying to help them find somewhere to live. He, the child mother, and the 2 children. And these are not stories. These are not stories that are made up. I am saying to you that ministry by ministry by ministry by ministry, and none is exempt. Jerome will get the chance to tell you about John Boyce, what he prefers to spend his time focusing on, but Indar can tell you that the time that he spends making sure that Indar can't get any work from the Ministry of Health for travel should be the time that he should be spending fixing the problems at the hospital. That's what is done when the day comes. And the time that rural has now been given an instruction, all like you, Kerry, don't bother to write rural, because they have been told that the only thing they are to do for Labour Party members of Parliament are street lights. No further work. And don't even worry Dale Marshall or Cynthia Ford or Miso that have victims from Thomas whose houses have not been fixed. And they need to tell the country whether they have used catastrophe fund money to do non-Thomas related work, and whether they are in a position to repay the $4 million that may have been used to do it. Or would they rather tell us why they are more focused on trying to ensure that a man who no longer, in their view, supports them and who, in their view, improperly expressed a view against the Prime Minister in December, would be the recipient of a letter to tell him that what you did, the Commission wishes to draw your attention to the following, written on the 14th of December 2012, that you have been participating in calling programs during working hours, which is also an offense, the penalty of which may include dismissal. And for driving a taxi, which he in fact owns. The same man, as a field officer, previously associated with the Labour Party, temporarily otherwise associated with them, and now associated once again with the Labour Party, has received a letter dated the 30th of May that his services will no longer be required, that he's being given a one month's notice of this decision, that they acknowledge that he's provided 5 years of temporary service. They gave the man a car loan, know that the man still has another year on the car loan, but sending him home and keeping people who come after him as the same field officer doing the same job. I feel it is political, and I feel it must stop. I have nothing to lose because my country is under the greatest assault that is possible. We have a Prime Minister who travels to the rest of the region and nobody even notices him. We had the Vice President of the United States of America and the President of China in Trinidad. They used to come to Barbados. They used to come to Barbados. And far from them not coming to Barbados now, he goes back, goes down, comes back, goes down, comes back, and we are none the wiser as to what interest of you, what interest of Barbadians has been served. What has he put forward to the Chinese? It cannot happen. And we are down to bread and butter issues now, comrades. You know, people ask, what really can happen? Sinclair wants to tell you that it can take him 4 months to do what he should have done 4 years ago. And he, by virtue of that, has caused everybody who had money to spend to stop spending because they don't know what he bring in and they don't know how it will affect them. And he, in one stroke, becomes the greatest problem to the confidence lacking in this economy as Minister of Finance. When Tom Adams had things to do, he dealt with it. He didn't talk about it. When Owen Arthur had things to do, he dealt with it. He didn't talk about it. Because they understood that confidence is critical to an economy. People will only spend, save, or do things if they feel that they have the confidence. You know, we hear that the banks are not lending the government 5-year money and 10-year money. And I've tried to explain it in the House as akin to you needing to borrow $10,000 for a year. And the person who is lending you says to you, I can lend you the money, but I only lending you for a week because I don't know where you're going to be in 12 months' time. And that every week, you have to go back cap in hand and say, please, sir, can I have another week with this money? And that's what treasury bills and treasury notes are. They are short-term instruments, 30 days, 90 days, 180 days. This is what your government has been reduced to. This is what the government that has had the pride before to be regarded as punching above its weight, this country. And we are now walking around cap in hand, begging for a short-term loan because we can't get 5-year loans and we can't get 10-year loans because nobody has the confidence that in 5 years' time we can pay them back the money, or the value which we pay them back will be the same value. And the truth is, if they see what money come out this week, they've got less confidence. The money psychedelic, pretty. Look as though somebody take a scissors and cut it at the side. I can't tell you that they have devalued the dollar, but there are a lot of people who want to say they've devalued the look of the dollar. Can't tell you that. Look at it. I can give it back. Look at it. The edges of it look as though somebody take a scissors or a guillotine and cut it. Come now, you don't want the feedback again. Somebody told me it looks as phony as the government. I don't know if I can agree with that, but that's what I was told. But you can't get 5-year money or 10-year money. And why do you need it? If you have money for 5 years, you have breathing space to do what you have to do. If you have money for 10 years, you have breathing space. But if you have to go every time and worry, this man gonna lend me the money again? This man gonna roll over the money? And it is at a time when we are borrowing more than we have ever had to borrow. So that to meet the difference between the money the government earns and the money the government got to spend, they have to borrow 1.2 billion. And we already know that that is a false figure, because we know that there are sums of money, like the National Housing one, that is not being brought to account. So when we tell you that they only vote 100 million for UE for this year, but we have to pay UE 160, but they still got to pay the other 60 million. When we tell you that they only give the QEH 145, but the QEH needs 200, they still got to give the QEH the other 55. When we tell you that they have not put in anything for the water authority, but because the electricity gone up on them too, they now need $10 million a year, they haven't put in that. Or that the national housing needs 30 million from government to run when the year comes, they haven't put in that. They haven't. And therefore, that 1.2 billion is likely to be more. Clyde referred to the 350 million foreign loan. Well, Clyde, I can now tell you that instead of the $350 million they told us they would borrow on the foreign markets, it is now 250 million US, in other words, 500 million. It will become the biggest single issuance by the government of Barbados since independence. 250 million US. But when you finish that, you still have to get the other 700 plus. And that has nothing to do with the 100 million for UE. And Kerry, you're correct. They're borrowing 100 from Scotia, but still owe 60, and nothing to do with the 60 that they're going to owe by the end of this year. So by the end of March, it will be 120 still owing. We are in deep trouble. And that is why I have taken my time. Some of you quarrel with me when I offered the government to help in general direction. I didn't do it because I like people. I did it because I'm a Barbadian, and because all of us must live here at the end of the day. But I am also saying to them that you have poo-pooed it. I did it in 2009 and 2010. Owen Arthur did it when he did the estimates and budget. I did it again this year. Well, there is no sense helping somebody who cannot help themselves. They don't want help, but they cannot help themselves either. And I make no bones about it. This country must have a government with a new mandate. We cannot negotiate our way out of these difficult circumstances with a 16-14 majority. And there's some who will say, I don't care who wins. It could be B, D, G, or F. But you need a majority to govern this country. And there are some, like the 47, who will go home by the end of July, having been told that they were brought on to work long term, and who, when their children are going to school in September, they're going to have to be in the house waving them goodbye because they will no longer be working. There are some who have been tricked like them, who will say, we will not be tricked by the Democratic Labour Party and Frondell Stewart and Chris Sinkler again. And there are some who may still want them. But the fundamental point is this. We cannot get Barbados out of this situation if the government refuses the help of the people, the opposition, the social partnership. And equally, if you do that, then you must have a new mandate, a new election. The people must be allowed to speak one way or the other. And that is a simple message that I have come to Foundation to share with you this evening. And you equally have to help me share it with the rest of the country. People know what they're feeling, but people want to be led. We will lead them. We will lead them. And we will give them hope. And we will give them a spirit of unflinching will. Because we will not stand idly by and believe that time can be a healer with a group of people who have shown that. Frondell has shown this is a way of life for him. This is not a short-term attitude to get an election won. He does not believe in mixing with people, in talking for people, in being creative, in leading people. And Barbados Frondell needs a leader now, and it is not you. And I give you the assurance, as I said to the party at the 75th anniversary church service, of necessity, we could be the alternative. We are the alternative. But that's not good enough for us. We must strive to be the answer, because this country does not need another alternative government. It needs a government to transform and rebuild and to be the answer for rescuing it. And I've equally said to you that we will work with people who are not necessarily members of the Labour Party. And Prophet bless you, star. Because not only are you not a member of the Labour Party, but as you shared with us, you don't normally come in forward like this to talk. Similarly, you too can. But we will work with people who are suffering and who know that better can come and must come. And the old people will tell you that one blow kill cow, all cow. And if it takes us weeks or months to bring together this coalition, we will do it. You know why? Because we have a solemn duty to the people of this country and to those who went before. Do you want to tell your grandchildren and your children that when given a country that was among the best in the world, that we in this generation let it drop out and drop off the map? I am not in that. And I ask, therefore, each of you in this party, I have met with the presidents and the secretaries along with the general secretary this week. We have agreed that we will meet every 3 months because we need to become the finest political machinery. And on another occasion, we as a party will talk about that too. Because we must not assume that we know everything or that we are fit for purpose. And we must become fit for purpose, because Bolt does not go and run the gold medal, the Olympic finals before he runs on the tracks or around the garrison. We will run round the garrison, we will run round the stadium, and we will run round the island, because we will then be fit for purpose. Equally, what you see here this evening does take money. And this party, I can tell you without fear of contradiction, is not directed or controlled by no 6 donors. None. And if we are going to make our way to do what we have to do for this country, then I've said to you that we are going to need your help. I'm not fooling you. And Jerome would have arranged a collection this evening already. Each of you will get a letter signed by Jerome and myself appealing to you to help us. You've seen the example of Obama. You've given the example of many hands make light work. I don't want nobody not to pay the light bill. I don't want nobody not to buy food. But if you got a $10 spare or a $20 spare, we need it. Because if I can get 2,100 people, 2,250 actually, 75 from each constituency, giving us a little something every month, then not a fella can tell us anything in this country, and we will go where we have to go without fear of anything and without fear of not having the resources. To do what we do here this evening costs money. And we need the party to be owned by its members and its supporters. I'm not hiding anything from you. I'm telling you as it is. As you will always, you have come to expect that from me, and you can put that in your pipe and smoke it, that you will always get that from me, straight down the line. So we in this together. And I say to you, finally, believe you me, your support, your encouragement, your letters, not just the ones here, ones in New York last weekend. We had a fantastic reception from the Barbadian community, and we believe that we will work with Barbadians wherever they are on this earth, because technology means that they can call you in the morning. You could share what you're doing for the day. The only thing they can't do is get in the car and drive and see you on the particular day. But that's what technology has done, and that's why we can build back this country, not just with the 270,000 present, but Barbadians by birth, by descent, and by choice, wherever they are to be found on this earth. But we need to work together. And I know in my heart of hearts, I know in my heart of hearts that the time has come to start the process of building this coalition to rescue Barbados. With all due respect, this country cannot take 5 years of this madness and this inertia. And Kian and Prophet, when you go to town tomorrow and the others ask, who will stand up for the vendors? Say that the Barbados Labour Party has said, we will. And when, Peter Chase, you go mixing with your farmers and the people doing intercrop rotation and want to know who will stand up for the sugar workers and the sugar planters, let them tell you the Barbados Labour Party has said, we will. And when people ask who will stand up for the people who are in the small hotels, who have not received a cent in money since 2011, 50 small hotels, not a cent from the Barbados Tourism Authority to help them market the 50 hotels down the hill there and all cross into Bridgetown on the West Coast. Tell them that the Barbados Labour Party has said, we will. And when they ask you who will stand up for the likes that are getting dismissed for political victimization, who will? And when they ask you who is going to stand up for the pharmacists who catching and smelling hell because of Donville's ill-conceived reforms that have affected the old people and have affected the business and workers in pharmacies, who will? And when they ask you who will stand up for the people at Crop Over who thought they could have made a cent this season and who now finding that they're smelling hell, who will? I can't hear you. Who will? And we will do so, bringing hope back to this country and with a spirit of unflinching will. I do not cry wolf. I do not cry wolf. But when I tell you all, come, come. Get yourself together. Gird your loins. This is the next week. This is a period of time where you, like me, will go into every nook and cranny. Because people must speak and people must share with us. But I am going to, like Martin Luther King and like Mahatma Gandhi, understand that the voice and the will of the people cannot be suppressed when they are facing the gravest injustices. And when you cannot live, when you cannot pay your bills, when you are losing your houses, you are facing the gravest injustice that can be done to you as a citizen of this country. And like them, I don't even hurt a fly contrary to rumor. Don't. I will support and lead people to have their voices heard And we will do what we have to do, but we will not condone any kind of behavior that offends the liberty, the person, or the property of another. And hear me carefully. Hear me carefully on that point. But if you want to call it civil disobedience, call it what you want. If you want to call it that we have had enough, call it what you want. If you want to say that time can no longer be a healer, say that. If you say that this is as good as it gets under Frondel and this is bad, call it that. If you want to say that his foot down to the metal and the car still moving, call it that. But what we know is that you will not be the victims anymore of an inactive, insensitive, and government that is literally loitering in the corridors of power. Good night and God bless.
Comrades, Mayor Motley, are you ready to be part of that coalition? Are you ready? Okay. It is now my pleasure to hand over to the General Secretary to give the vote of thanks for today's proceedings.